Dodgers traded for a former All-Star closer, but let's pump the brakes a little bit.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. This is a daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day, and you can make that easier on yourself by subscribing and get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube like we are here on Thursday evening. If this is your first time listening, watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. That's Jeff Snyder, and we've been doing Locked On Dodgers since 2019. We've been covering the Dodgers for over a decade. We've been Dodger fans our whole lives. So we're going to talk what we know best, the Dodgers. And the Dodgers made a trade. No game on Thursday, but there was a trade. They traded for former All-Star closer Alexis Diaz. That sounds a lot better than what it actually is, but there's still potential there. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about maybe what prompted them to make this move. Evan Phillips getting moved to the 60-day IL. Some guys starting to work their way back. Where's the bullpen at right now? And then we're going to talk about struggling players, and if they need to talk to media, do we care? Do we not care? We're going to get into all that. But first, let's start with Alexis Diaz, Jeff. He was an all-star in 2023. He's the brother of Mets reliever Edwin Diaz. And despite the name having some value, he was currently in the minor leagues, and he will report to Camelback Ranch to, I would assume, work with coaches on them fixing what's been wrong with him and get him back to the Dodgers.
Yeah, it seems like the fact that they have him reporting to Camelback Ranch suggests that they at least have something in mind. And we've heard it so many times over the years with Anthony Bonda. It was using the slider more with Ryan Brazier. I think it was a new pitch or a pitch that he threw, but not very often at all. And they tweaked that. It could be that simple. The problem with Diaz this year and really throughout his career, but especially this year, is just walking too many guys. And also in the big leagues, at least, he only threw 6 innings in the big leagues so far this year. So you can't draw any huge conclusions. His strikeout rate was bad. He only struck out 3 batters in those 6 innings. His strikeout percentage was 9% when for his career, it's been high 20s, 27 to 30%. It was 9% this year. Again, at 6 innings. In the minor leagues, that it's been higher. The strikeout rate is back up, but the walk rate is still up. And so that seems like the thing to fix. I texted Jeff Carr, who is one of the hosts of Locked On Reds, after this trade went down, and I asked him if he had any insights, and he said the first thing he said was, "Hope you can help him find the strike zone." But then he also followed that up with being surprised that the Reds were giving up on him because he does have 2 more years of team control after this year. He's 28 years old. He'll be 29 in September. So he's not old, not young necessarily. But I mean, like you said, he was an all-star just a couple years ago. He legitimately has really good stuff. He just doesn't know where it's going right now, apparently. And so that seems like what the Dodgers think maybe they can fix.
Yeah, with the Reds, money always plays into it with them. And that might be a case of, well, we don't think he's going to be good enough beyond this year. He's making $4.5 million this year. He's probably going to make around similar next year, even with arbitration and everything else. And, they just don't want to pay $5 million for somebody that is maybe not going to factor into their bullpen. And for the Dodgers, that's where they can take advantage. You know what? They take on a little bit of salary that he has for the rest of this year with the chance of, they can non-tender him or they can keep him, whatever they end up doing with him. And obviously they see something. And with the Reds giving up on him in this way for, a guy that we might not ever hear his name again, 13th round pick, there's not too many of those that end up making the big leagues and having a huge impact. And for the Dodgers, it makes sense, especially if they see something. They need warm bodies at this point, and there's plenty of warm bodies out there when they get DFA'd or people that are maybe just got let go, released, or whatever the case is. But this is a step up from that. Somebody that has had success, very good success as recently in 2 years ago. He was pretty decent last year, not great. And if they can just figure out how to throw strikes, they could have a reliever that helps them now when they need it and maybe in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see a question in the chat. Why don't the Dodgers just sign Joe Kelly? And, at this point, with the way the Dodger bullpen is going, I wouldn't rule that out at some point. As far as I know right now, Joe Kelly is still recovering from injury. But also, Joe Kelly is 10 years older and also struggles to throw strikes and also has a declining strikeout rate. That we know what Joe
wouldn't have an option.
Yeah, that's true too. Joe Kelly would be stuck on the active roster, so they wouldn't have an option to try to fix him. If the Dodgers sign Joe Kelly, it means things have gotten really dire, or it's like, okay, well, we've got 3 weeks we need to fill. But yeah, Joe Kelly's probably not walking through this door. I think this move makes a lot more sense than something like signing Joe Kelly, because Diaz, last year, Kelly and Diaz both had a 4.57 FIP. They were the same quality of pitcher last year. The difference is that Diaz has a higher ceiling and a more recent track record of being really good, and also isn't currently injured. It's like you said at the beginning, pumping the brakes. Like this, when you texted me, so I was in my car and I was at a stoplight and I got a text from Vince with a link to the tweet about this trade going down. And like you said, Vince, it's like, or initially your reaction is, whoa, that's big. And then it's like, wait, I don't follow the Reds. I pay attention a little bit. I don't remember seeing him much on recaps so far this year when I'm watching game recaps. And when I have seen him, it hasn't really been good. And the Reds were willing to trade him. And so then I looked, oh yeah, he's not even in the big leagues right now. Like this is a bigger deal in name than in action. But also, it's the kind of move that the Dodgers have had some decent success with over the last few years.
It's just a more high-profile version of a Ryan Brazier or, someone in that vein. Brazier was really good, not quite all-star level, but he was really good, and then he was really bad. And the Dodgers traded for him. They changed a couple of things, had him throw a different pitch more often, and then, boom, he was really good and served his purpose. And, the Dodgers ended up moving on from him when they upgraded the bullpen significantly in the offseason. And now they're at a point where they kind of need someone like this. And there is a big difference between a guy like Ryan Brazier who, has had success, but it's manufactured by himself, where Alexis Diaz, has had success and it's been all-star level and he's been a closer, and he probably, change of scenery is something that always gets mentioned. The Reds have been kind of treading water and mediocre over the last few years, and not to say anything bad about Alexis Diaz and him losing focus or anything like that, but there's always going to be some kind of mentality when, like the reality hits you, or you get humbled or anything like that. Like, okay, I got sent down. Oh, now they traded me for a 13th round pick. Like now he has a chip on his shoulder, and you always want to create something to try to help you and gain a mental edge in this game. And obviously the physical part of it is the big thing that he needs to work on. But if this helps the mental part of it just a little bit, then the Dodgers will, have a all-star reliever for very cheap.
Yeah, and like we said, he does have 2.5 years of team control left. So if they can fix him, it's a good option going forward too. And if they can't, they can always just non-tender him after this year, which is probably what the Reds would have done, which is why they were, he's probably going to make $6 million in arbitration next year. And the Reds were like, well, we're not going to pay that. And he's currently in the minors, so let's get something for him. So they got a lottery pick prospect. And in the end, it'll be interesting to see if the Dodgers activate him sooner or later, if he goes to Camelback and then they say, okay, let's work on this in the big leagues because we are shorthanded in relief. It would be kind of fun because the Dodgers play his brother's team starting on Monday at Dodger Stadium. So it would be fun if he was there. But I have to assume they have at least somewhat of a plan, and definitely inklings of a plan if they were going to trade for him.
Yeah, I feel like it's a couple bullpens of something they want to show him or work on him with and get him to the majors. Because the reality is the Dodgers need relievers, and they need good relievers, and they are lacking in right-handed relievers also because, but once you get past Ben Kasperius on the right-hand side, there's not much left. So we'll see what happens, and we'll continue to monitor the situation. The one thing the Dodgers did in order to get Alexis Diaz on the 40-man roster was put Evan Phillips on the 60-day IL. What does that mean for him? What does that mean for the rest of the bullpen? And who else is coming back? We're going to talk about it all, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Trade Coffee. Whether you're gearing up for back-to-back meetings, shuttling kids back and forth to activities, or tacking an endless to-do list, your morning sets the tone for it all. That's why it should start with a perfect cup of coffee crafted just for you. Enter Trade. I took Trade's quiz. So what they do is they have a quiz. You put, how you like your coffee, why you like your coffee, what you use your coffee for. Boom, boom, boom. It takes about a minute or so. And then they send you a bag that they believe is for you. I'm someone that's not a huge coffee drinker, but when I do drink coffee, I like it a little bit stronger, but not, too strong, a little bit in the middle. And boom, they send me this. They sent me Juggernaut, which is a cool name. It says sort of dark, really good, dark-ish roast, which is perfect. I like it dark, but not too dark. So dark-ish roast was perfect, and it's complemented my mornings very greatly. So right now, Trade is offering exclusively to our customers 50% off a 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. That's TRADE.com/lockedonmlb for 50% off your 1-month trial. drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day, your last listen of the day, any listen of the day. We appreciate those of you that listen. And if it's your first time listening, you can always come back tomorrow or the day after. I guess tomorrow, if you came back, you might not hear us, but you definitely would find an old episode or listen to the postcast with Post Pete Fox. All right, Jeff. Evan Phillips, we've talked about him, how it hasn't looked good so far. He hasn't picked up a baseball. There was still some discomfort, and that tracks because now he's been placed on the 60-day IL, and he hasn't been on the IL that long yet. I believe he had it tracked at 22 days, which would mean 38 days for him to come back. Now, if he hasn't picked up a baseball and he's been out, at least 3 weeks already, then a month is probably normal for rehab and everything else. But it just seems like this is something that is more than, he'll be back in a month. It seems like we could not see Evan Phillips the rest of this year.
Yeah, especially when you combine it with Dave Roberts the other day saying that there is some concern there that Phillips still is experiencing soreness. We joked the other day, but kind of that it's funny because it's true sort of joking way that if even Dave Roberts is admitting concern, it must be bad. And so, yeah, at this point, I don't know if I think Evan Phillips is out for the year, but, forearm soreness, tightness, whatever, and still sore, unfortunately, often means an elbow injury. And elbow injury often means Tommy John surgery. I'm not breaking any news here saying Evan Phillips is getting Tommy John surgery. That's not what I'm saying. But I would be much less surprised if we find out that news than I would be about a lot of things in life. I'm not super easily surprised anyway, but that would not surprise me at all. And yeah, this does seem to be an indicator, at least when combined with Dave Roberts' quote. I think one or the other, well, Dave Roberts' quote was concerning on its own. I think if it was just this, but we hadn't heard that he hasn't even picked up a ball, I'd be thinking, okay, well, that just means that they expect him to be out at least another 5 weeks. That's not that crazy. But you throw in the quote from Dave Roberts, and it's like, yeah, we might not see Evan Phillips for a long time.
Yeah, and with the bullpen already compromised, that's not the greatest thing to hear, but there could be help on the way, some sooner rather than later, and some maybe a few weeks down the line. Michael Kopech pitched again for OKC last night. He's, coming up close to the point where he's going to return, assuming they feel he's good to go and he's healthy and everything else, which the results have been mixed in his appearances, but he has continued to make his appearances, which is as good a sign as any that he's still healthy. And then we got the update that Emmett Sheehan and Edgardo Henriquez are both with OKC. They're both going to start their rehab assignments. Sheehan's probably going to build back up to a starter, so it'll take him a little bit while. Henriquez, honestly, we haven't heard too much. Like Dave Roberts has been asked about him a couple of times, and he's kind of not given a straight answer. So we're not entirely sure how long it'll take him to get back. But at the very least, it's good to see guys throwing again. And, I don't know if it's going to help in the next 2-3 weeks, but it could help beyond that and, give the Dodgers more time to kind of put stuff down the line.
Yeah, with Enriquez specifically, a week ago now, Dave Roberts said he's throwing. It seems a lot longer, this process of him coming back, so I have no idea when he's going to come back. He'll be on rehab assignments, and that's going to be probably 5 or 6 games before we even have a conversation of him coming back. And so, you figure days off and everything, 5 or 6 days, you're looking at least 2 weeks of rehab before, according to Dave Roberts, before we even have a conversation of him coming back. So, maybe that conversation is, yeah, he looks great. Let's do a back-to-back, and then he's back, and we see him in 2.5 weeks, maybe, but maybe it's longer. As far as Kopech, basically he'll be back in the next 9 days because he's been on a rehab assignment for 3 weeks already, and the limit is 30 days, and he doesn't have any minor league options available. And so the velocity looks good. He's healthy, apparently. The command is still struggling in the minors, but one way or another, he's going to be back in the next 9 days, just because of the rules of baseball. And I hope
the adrenaline helps him either find the zone or throw fast enough to where guys are swinging and they don't know where the ball is exactly.
Yeah, one way or the other. It might be a rocky start. I do expect him to get the command back, at least to, Michael Kopech's never been a huge command guy anyway, but he needs to get back because we saw late last year, that he can be very effective even without having elite command because he does have elite velocity, very good stuff. And so he'll be back in the next week and a half. Enriquez probably in the next 3 weeks, no more than 30 days for him because that's the limit on rehab assignment. And then on the starting side, Emmett Sheehan is also going on a rehab assignment. He'll be starting on Sunday. I assume that's when he will officially start his rehab assignment on Sunday. And so we'll be looking at 33 days from now is when his rehab assignment would have to end. He does have minor league options available, and so they wouldn't necessarily have to bring him back to big leagues then, but everybody seems excited about Sheehan. And so if the rehab assignments go well and he gets built up, I think the buildup would be the only reason that they might not bring him back as soon as he's done with the rehab assignment. If he's only built up to 60 pitches, maybe they're thinking, okay, well, we can't afford that right now with the state of our bullpen, so let's build him up in AAA. But if he can get built up to 90 pitches during rehab, he's probably finding his way back to the Dodgers rotation.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of positive words and a lot of smiling faces when Emmett Sheehan's name gets brought up. He's come back well from the surgery. He was one of the guys that kind of shined between all those young pitchers, in the last couple of years. Ultimately, almost all of them ended up getting hurt. So it's good to see that he's the one that's coming back soon. And yeah, it's one of those where he'll get built up as a starter. I would imagine, unless the Dodgers are in complete dire needs and say, you know what, let's just call him up and we'll figure it out, whether it's, pitching a couple innings once a week or, starting games and seeing how deep it can go or whatever the case. That might happen, especially with, they have today off, but they're not going to have too many days off in the next month either. So there's different ways for them to use them, but, it feels weird because they don't, sometimes they don't rush guys back and sometimes it feels like they do rush guys back. But I feel like at this point with a lot of those arms that are coming back, like they're not all on the younger side. They're not all necessarily top like prospects. So, we could see different ways of them utilizing these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had that thought today that maybe, with the state of this bullpen and the state of the rotation, maybe as, with Emmett Sheehan getting healthy, if he takes Landon Knack's spot in the rotation, maybe they keep Knack as a long reliever, and have him bump out somebody else because right now, like we said, Ben Casparis and Jack Dreyer are the two guys they trust, but they're also two longish relievers. And I was like, well, why not build the whole bullpen out of long relievers? While Trinan and Gratterall and Yates and Phillips are all hurt. All right, well, let's go with Justin Robleski and Landon Knack and, maybe even Bobby Miller. I saw somebody in the chat earlier say that the Bobby Miller as a reliever experiment failed. It hasn't even been attempted yet. Bobby Miller, they called him up because they needed coverage, and he was literally the only option. That's why Bobby Miller pitched out of the bullpen last week. It was not you're a reliever now. They could pull that trigger and, maybe just go that route. Who knows what they're going to do, but it would be nice for them to start getting options at least. So if they get Kopech back and he can find some command, they get Henriquez back, and then they get Sheehan back, and then you do start to have a few more options where you can move guys between the rotation and the bullpen if necessary, and try to figure out some creative way to get through these games. And mostly it's just terrible timing because the Dodgers are in their toughest stretch of the season right now, and probably their toughest injury stretch too. After they get through these 29 games that they're a week into right now, then they have the easiest schedule in baseball after that. And so it can all come together at that point. Maybe they just need to kind of survive this, and would be easier if all these guys were like 2 weeks further ahead in their progress than they are right now.
So Tanner Scott didn't speak to reporters after the game on Wednesday. Big deal, not big deal. We'll get into that discussion, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is there for you to get the job done right, with all the latest product info and helpful resources. Plus, with an inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert and industry-leading service, so you always talk to a real person, which is always great. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. That's free shipping, discounts, dedicated phone line. What else could you really look for? Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of the listens every day. I want to thank you if you're an everydayer. An everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. We appreciate those of you that already are everydayers. If this is your first time listening or watching, you can become an everydayer very easily by just starting to listen or watch every day. The Dodgers are in season. There's always something going on. So, why not tune back in? And if you want to go beyond the podcast, you can do so by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers and get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with the Dodgers, and join our exclusive Discord server where you can talk Dodgers with other Dodger fans and other insiders. And Jeff, we've talked about this subject before, but I don't remember how long ago it was. Definitely maybe around the time when Kenley Jansen was around for sure, because he, after a certain point, he always seemed to talk and definitely didn't say things that most of us wanted to hear sometimes. But it was brought up by Dave Vassegh on Dodger Talk that Tanner Scott wasn't out there speaking to reporters after the game after he blew the save. And, he had stronger words and opinions than I have, probably for sure than you have. And, I guess it's just one of those things where how many jobs do you have to talk to people after you have a really bad day? Yeah,
here's what Vassegh said. I won't do my impression of Vassegh because we keep the show to 30 minutes, and so talking as slow as him would eat up too much time. It says, and if you're Tanner Scott and you're the closer and you're making more than anybody else in that bullpen, you should be standing at your locker after the game today. Kenley Jansen used to get criticized early in his closing career after he blew saves, rare saves, by the way, with the Dodgers, that he wasn't at his locker to be accountable. Where was Tanner Scott today? He did not speak to the media. You've got to be there. It shouldn't be just Alex Vesia. Sorry, Alex Vesia had to try to clean up a mess. Alex Vesia is a two-time World Series champion. He has credibility with the fan base. Tanner Scott, you don't. And there's plenty to quibble with it. And this came after he was talking about the defensive positioning on that play, which I also disagreed with, but you can go to yesterday's episode if you want to hear why I think that's off base. And also, I think it's fine to disagree. I think it's fun. One of the great things about being a baseball fan is disagreeing with other baseball fans on things. And so I'm not saying Dave Vassegh is an idiot. I do think he talks too slow, but I think that he and I see things differently sometimes, and that's fine. He said Kenley Jansen used to get criticized early in his closing career for not being accountable at his locker. That was August of 2019. That was way deep into his closing career, not early in his closing career. that all that really came to a head of him not being in his locker. And like Vince said, after the fact, when he did start being in his locker, then people didn't like what he said. I'll say more about that in a second. The other thing I'll quibble about is if you're going to talk about credibility and say Alex Vesia has credibility because he's a two-time World Series champion, you should also remember that Alex Vesia was traded by the Marlins to the Dodgers for Dylan Floro, who actually was on that 2020 team. Alex Vesia is a one-time World Series champion, which, he still has been a Dodger longer, but, as long as we're getting facts right, let's get facts right. But for me, if this was a standard thing, if Tanner Scott never talked to the media, I'd probably be on board. Be like, yeah, you gotta man up. But this isn't an every time thing. And I'm perfectly fine with if a guy has a terrible day at work and doesn't want to talk about it, I'm okay with that. Because like we said with Kenley Jansen, it's not like anything he says is going to add any insight anyway. What's he going to say? I didn't throw a good slider to Nolan Jones. Okay, yeah, we knew that. Maybe he says something to keep himself positive. Like, you know what? It's just one game. I'll bounce back. Also true. Remember how well fans took it when Mookie Betts said they drive nice cars too? Like Mookie Betts tried to make the point that the guys on the other team are really good at baseball too, and they're trying hard to win, and sometimes you just lose. Fan base did not like that. There's nothing that Tanner Scott can say there that's going to add any value or make anybody feel better. And I guess they need a quote from Tanner Scott. Just make it up. Leave a note in your locker that says, feel free to write whatever, pretend I said whatever cliche you want me to say out loud. Because that's the thing. Like, I feel like the media sometimes gets a little bit too entitled. Like, these guys owe it to us. They owe us the quotes for our articles. It's like, we know what Tanner Scott's going to say, and we already know it's true anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what he's going to say is probably not going to bring much value. I mean, Max Muncy spoke the other day after his struggles defensively and basically said, I'm working on it. And I don't know if anything that he said made fans feel better about it. And then, he trips over his feet the other day, which not entirely a defensive issue, just, kind of a little bit of bad luck and, maybe a little bit of, I don't know. But for me, it is kind of tough because I do feel like even though it's a weird thing and even though it's become the norm and, even though there's been a lot of changes in media over the last few years, I still think you should be at your locker to kind of say something, even if it's, I'm not going to talk today or I was bad today or like a one word. I think that's just like the one of the few old school things I have. And I know I saw some people saying, well, like, oh, it's in their contract. They have to speak. It's not, I don't know what the exact wording is, but it's not in the contract that they have to speak every time they play well or play bad. There are times where you are contractually obligated to speak to media. And I think the Dodgers, like PR and those people, take care of that, handle that part so that, everybody's up to, the point. But yeah, I regardless of what it means, what he said, what value it was, I think it's a thing for me that a guy just stands there after a tough game and, give some lip service.
Yeah. Alex in the chat says, blowing off the media is also blowing off the fans. And that's why I'm saying, if this was every time, I would agree, but if Tanner Scott just blew save after save after save and never talked to the media and walked out of the locker room laughing and drinking a beer and, farting in the media's face on the way out the door or whatever. Yeah. Okay. But this is one time that he had a terrible game, 3 bad games out of his last 5. He's obviously frustrated right now. And if his mindset was, I have nothing to add to this situation right now. And for my best chance of getting right is to put this behind me right now at this moment, not after I'm done talking to the media. If the thing I care most about as a Dodger fan is that Tanner Scott starts pitching better. And if Tanner Scott thinks that his best chance of pitching better is to blow off the media one night, great. I care a lot more about the Dodgers winning games than reporters getting their cliche quotes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where if this wasn't the norm for a long time now, then I probably wouldn't even care really. And like I said, I don't really care what he says or what came from it is just one of those where, guys don't want to talk to media a lot of times, especially after a bad game. But also, and these guys might not care about what they look like to either media or fans. And I don't think I've been around, the team obviously, and Tanner Scott. I haven't really had a deep conversation with him, but I've never seen anything that shows me anything other than, he maybe just didn't want to talk that day, and that's how it goes sometimes. It was a lot different. I remember Matt Latos when he was around.
You and I were both in the locker room after Matt Latos's
it was
last game as a Dodger.
That was the only time I felt like fear that let me just stand a couple steps
back. The player might attack the media who's talking to him. That dude. Alex says that Tanner Scott also blew off the media in New York after he blew that save. That game lasted 4.5 hours, not counting the 3 hour or the hour and a half rain delay. That one doesn't count to me. I suspect that there wasn't a whole lot of media talking going on there. Is the very bare minimum for everybody. And we'll see what happens going forward. But hopefully what happens going forward is Tanner Scott pitches better. And so everybody's having happy conversations at his locker.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to is, you play better on the field, and then you'll probably want to talk to the media because then they'll be like heaping praise on you or something like that. So.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, anything else before we get out? It's a big weekend for the Dodgers facing the Yankees. I saw someone out there say the Yankees can make a statement this weekend. The Yankees swept the Dodgers. The statement would be that the Yankees swept the Dodgers in May into June. And, maybe Max Fried continues his solid stretch. Yeah,
Max Fried against Landon Knack. That statement, if you're a Yankees fan, you better hope that statement was, Max Fried beat Landon Knack. I feel like the Dodgers have a better chance to make a statement. If the Dodgers can pull off a win on Friday, it's like, how's that for a statement?
Yankees are coming in hot. Dodgers are coming in treading water. And will it suck if the Dodgers lose the series? Yes, but it won't mean anything for who won the series last year in the regular season.
Dodgers won 2 out of 3 at Yankee Stadium, right? Teoscar had the 2 big games. Yeah, Yamamoto and Stone.
Judge got hurt 2 years ago, right? So
in LA. Yeah, I think Yamamoto and Stone both pitched good games in New York last year.
Oh, yeah. But I didn't feel any better about the Dodgers' chances after that.
It's not like we went into the World Series. All right, we won 2 out of 3 in New York, so now we're definitely going to win the World Series. But that might just be more about you never feeling good about anything in October, Vince. So.
Yeah, that's it. All right. That's going to do it for today's episode. We'll be back on Sunday night to talk about the series. Unless somebody throws like a perfect game or something, then we'll definitely hop back on and try to speak about it. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us every podcast and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening or watching every day, which can be made easier by subscribing and get notified when episodes are ready. You can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can also check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter, @NightDog. I'm at VinceSince91. You can DM us with any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, here's my advice by podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you on Sunday.